Hi, here's what's happening on today's Canfield and Company. Dropped in the outhouse. What would you go in for? Also, on today's show, the state of California is going to save the planet. They're going to say no to farts, and I wish I was making this up. These stories and more coming up right now. Hi, welcome to Canfield and Company. I'm Rob Canfield, and I'm your host today. I'm here with my co-host today. He's also the director over in the control room, Frank Martin. How are things going in there today, Frank? Air conditioning still working?
Yes, sir. The ice cubes are forming.
I couldn't resist checking through some of the offbeat things online. This is actually on, I think, Oregon Live. Give them credit where credit is due. Offbeat things you have read about and you think, oh my gosh, I'm glad this didn't happen to me. Anyway, over in Norway, kind of other side of the world, Europe-ish, this guy, he climbed into an outhouse. Well, he climbed down into an outhouse in an attempt to retrieve a cell phone. It wasn't even his cell phone. He climbed down into the muck of this outhouse, Frank, and then he got stuck. He got stuck down there. He got stuck so bad they called the firefighters, and it took 4 firefighters over an hour. They basically had to demolish the outhouse, and then, I'm kind of starting to gag reflex, dig him out of there. And he says, and I quote, "It was disgusting as hell." Well, duh. He says, "The worst thing I've ever experienced." He says animals were down there too, and he apparently he didn't even get the cell phone. Frank, if your buddy or you dropped your keys or a cell phone down in a house, would you go down for it?
No. I would say, no, that's crappy reception. I'm not going down there. Sorry, folks, I could not resist.
You know, this is like, when you go camping, okay, this is like your worst nightmare. My wife and I, we've gone with the kids, we've gone on our own to all sorts of campgrounds and Forest Service campgrounds and BLM campgrounds all across Oregon. And it's like your worst nightmare. You have to go in one of these pit toilets and you look down and it's like 10 feet and down there, it's just massive quantities of crap, diapers, you name it, it's gone down there. And so it's always my worst nightmare. Make sure I don't have my keys with me, my wallet. It's not even 100 feet from there. Because when I'm doing my business, that's what I think of. Oh my gosh, all that valuable stuff, I hope it didn't accidentally fall in there. I've had nightmares about this while going camping, Frank. Has it ever happened to you? Have nightmares about it?
I'm always worried about it myself. I do know somebody who used to work in the Umatilla County Forest, and his job was to empty those facilities.
Oh.
And he would tell me of the various things that they would find in the truck afterwards.
Yeah, So this guy actually went down there, not even for his cell phone. This is a true friend, Frank. If you're going down for a cell phone that doesn't even belong to you. And
there's a reason why I pay $5 a month replacement on my phone.
Yeah, and I think you're right. They would get crappy reception down there. That's Frank's line. I had to use it too. Okay, on this article it had another wacky story, offbeat. I think you're going to like this one. So in the country of Turkey, this family was throwing a dinner party, and they were celebrating the recovery that they had food poisoning, and so they were celebrating their recovery from food poisoning. That's why they had the party. They had all this food. But what happened is they ended up getting sick again, and the guests they had in the party, they got food poisoning too. 25 people were sent to the hospital. Now the article said, I don't know why this is funny, Frank, but it's funny. Food poisoning is not funny, but it's funny. You're having a party to celebrate. You got a food poisoning and you've poisoned yourself. I think I'd be going to restaurants after that. I would not go to that house. Anyway, they said the family pledged to, quote, become more selective of their food.
It's
more
not
selective.
funny. I became very sick in Germany over food poisoning, but it is funny when you read that they're having a celebration dinner of surviving a bout of food poisoning, and they poison themselves once again.
Yeah, and it is really not funny. I mean, I've had food poisoning, and it's like death warmed over. It's pretty horrible, but having a party to celebrate getting over food poisoning, and you get food poisoning again. Okay, it's funny. Shoot me. I think it's funny. Now, next, in this offbeat story, I can relate to this because I can. In Canada, a teenager was really ticked off. She was being forced. Her family was forcing her to go on vacation. Their teenage daughter. They forced her teenage daughter to go on vacation with them. So what'd she do? She calls 911 on their family. And according to the article, apparently she was not aware that being compelled to spend time with your family, it's not kidnapping. Now, I think if you're a teenager, you probably think you are being kidnapped. Actually, this happened to me. I forced our son and daughter to go on a camping trip to Steens Mountain, French Glen, Malheur County with us. They didn't want to go. And our daughter was furious. She's, I don't want to go, she says. And I said, well, guess what? You have to go. You're part of the family. Oh, it was so much fun. My favorite part of the trip, we were at Steens Mountain. You can drive on this really cruddy dirt road with big potholes. You can drive to within about 3/4 of a mile of the summit of Steens Mountain. It's really cool. So I said to my son and daughter and my wife Tana, let's trek up to the top. And my daughter says, I'm not going. I'm waiting here by the car. I said, fine. You go ahead and wait here. And all the sun was out. The wind was really blowing. It was pretty chilly. So my wife and my son, we hiked up to the summit of Steens Mountain, looked over the other side. Beautiful. You could see the Alvord Desert for miles. You could see forever. I wasn't supposed to do this. Frank told me not to do this because it's a virtual set. I'm showing the people on a virtual set, don't do this. Anyway, so we saw the expanse of Steens Mountain, and I started chuckling to myself, and my son says, what's so funny, Dad? And I said, well, Sam, it's funny because our daughter wanted to stay down there, but I didn't unlock the car for her. So she's down there in a freezing wind. She thought she was going to sit in the car, listen to her device, and read in the warm car. I know it's a cruel dad. I did not unlock the car for her.
Well,
Yeah.
at least she didn't have a cell phone to call 911 on you.
I don't think she had. You could have cell phone range up there. So even if she had, she wouldn't have been able to call. So it's call 911. But I think if she had a cell phone at the time, and it was in range, I'm sure she would have called the police on me. Because hey, going on a vacation with your family is kidnapping. So this has actually happened to me. And we'll be back right after this, Frank, with another weird topic today on today's show. Hi, welcome back to Canfield Company. We're having a really fun show today. We talked about some oddball stuff. You won't believe this, folks. Oh, by the way, my co-host today is Frank Martin, our director, who we were talking about some dumb stuff we've done as kids, like being kidnapped by parents go on vacation. Anyway, Frank, state of California, they're kind of out there, aren't they?
I know what you're going to come up with,
Yeah.
and I'm going to keep it clean.
So the state of California decided they need to regulate cow farts. And I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. They decided that because, hey, global warming, hey, Al Gore, they decided cow farts must be regulated, and I wish I were making this up. They recently actually approved regulations on cow flatulence and manure, and they said, hey, this stuff causes releasing greenhouse gases. Cow farts and manure. But they were kind to the dairy farms that said, hey, we're going to give you more time to comply with our rules. So the article that says it's a good thing that we killed those tens of millions of buffalo back in the 1800s, otherwise we'd be dead by now from global warming, Frank, don't you think?
Oh, Lord.
Regulating cow farts and manure. I mean...
Well, I guess those happy cows aren't going to be so happy anymore.
Have these legislators ever been to a college frat party? I'm just saying, or a Boy Scout campout. Pretty soon they're going to regulate Boy Scout campouts where this is what they do. Or any camping trip. I believe this is what you do, don't you, Frank?
It has been done, I know.
And I've been on some camping trips when I was a kid where the fart was basically, we tried to do the eternal flame. Just imagine that. So I'm glad that the California legislature has not come into Oregon.
What I can't figure out is, when I read that article, I was going, how are they going to control cows farting? What regulation can you come up with to make controls for that? It boggles the mind to even think about it.
How do you regulate manure and fart? How do you regulate farts? Well, only in California. I'm sure they'll think of a way. If this had been happened in the 60s, I'm sure the Beach Boy would have written a song about going on a farting safari. You know, come on a farting safari with me. So, enough of that. Next topic, we're going to go right to the next topic. This is the People Are Idiots National Parks Edition. You know, you go to Disneyland, it's fake. You go to the national parks, Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Yosemite, Smoky Mountain, Zion Park,
The Grand Canyon.
the Grand Canyon. These places are wild. They have lots of wild animals. They're big, they're huge, and guess what? We are at the bottom of the food chain. A lot of people don't realize this, Frank. We are at the bottom of the food chain. We got some idiots in our national parks doing some dumb stuff. I'm sure a lot of you went on YouTube or saw the news report where a Canadian tourist put a baby bison, a calf, in the back of his SUV. He thought it was going to freeze. He thought it would save it. So he took it to the ranger station, and unfortunately the rangers had to euthanize the baby bison because his bison family refused to bond again with it once it had human contact. You got dumb people doing this stuff. Then Yellowstone, you've got visitors, you had 3 visitors in Asia at Yellowstone. They were cited on multiple occasions for illegally collecting water from the park's thermal features. And just recently, a guy in Washington State, a young kid, he was just 18, 20 years old, he was killed, and he left the designated boardwalk and he fell into a near boiling hot spring. You know how hot this water is? You fall in there, it's near boiling water, and it's nasty stuff. There's nothing to recover. It's like that, you're gone. And there's signs all over the place in Yellowstone and the other parks, hey, don't go off the boardwalk, stay away from the animals. You've got visitors, you see it all the time, they want to get close enough to that grizzly bear or that elk or that moose or that bison. They don't realize that the bison laying on the ground, guess what? He can run 30, 40 miles an hour, and they'll kill you. The Yellowstone website for many years had a video of a guy being tossed 30 feet up a fir tree by a bison because he got too close. And people are still doing this. The latest news report, there was a gentleman, his name was John Gleason. He said he considered himself a experienced woodsman and hunter, and he crept through the grass with 4 little kids to get within about a dozen yards of a large bull elk. A large bull elk, okay? Those bull elk are very cantankerous, would you say, Frank? Cantankerous?
They can be.
Yeah.
The only one that I would think is even more cantankerous is a moose.
Is a moose. So he's got 4 little kids with him, crawling through the brush to get closer. And he said he maybe felt he was too close, but he was experienced because he was an experienced hunter who spent lots of time outdoors because, hey, don't mind him, he knows what he's doing, even with 4 little kids. Reminds me of that movie, Frank, that's becoming true in real life, Idiocracy. These guys are idiots. These guys are idiots. And there's safety advisories too. You go into the park, there's big signs, don't go near the animals. And all the reading material, don't go near the animals. But every year, visitors get gored by bison, and they get mauled by bears, or killed by bears, or chased by elk. And this one lady said, hey, she's not afraid of the park's wildlife. She said, I just want to see one right here so I can feed it a cookie. Yeah, I think a bear's paw is about like this. Yeah, feed it a cookie and take out half the side of your body, huh, Frank?
Now, I've never been to Yellowstone when the bears were coming up to the cars. I've never been there. But I once packed horse from the Grand Tetons into Yellowstone back in the South Canyons where the bears got pushed back into. And yes, we were at a campground and a bear came up and we fed it. That was a mistake because the next morning he showed up for breakfast and he wanted food.
Yeah.
And then it made me realize that we never should have gone near that bear at all because then we had to be mindful where we put everything in our campground.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I think it was 8 or 9 years old, I went on a cross-country car trip with my grandparents to visit my uncle in Wisconsin, and we stopped in the Yellowstone. The first day there, just driving through, and we had a nice little picnic out on the picnic table. And this was the 60s, and this one when people were still feeding bears, and they were all over the place. There would be bear gridlock because the bears would be going from car to car in the traffic, going from car to car, and people would be feeding them from the cars. Of course, nowadays they don't allow that, but back then in the 60s they did. So we're having this picnic, and this bear comes, and he comes to our picnic table, and he just starts helping ourselves. And my grandpa says, "Get in the car, get in the car, get in the car." So we do. We get in the car, and my grandmother said, "Don't let him have the paper towels." She goes over, and she's wrestling this bear who's got the roll of paper towels in his mouth. And my grandfather's going nuts. Get away from there. So the bear, my grandpa threw some food. He dropped the paper towels. We all got in the car. We brought the roll of paper towels back with us to prove that we had the paper towels. But the last time my wife and I were in Yellowstone, we didn't see any bears. But we saw plenty of elk, we saw moose, and we saw other animals that were, people would get out of the car. There was a bison in the middle of the road, and people were getting out of their cars in the midst of a herd of bison to take pictures. These bison were as big as our car. I would never do that in a million years.
You don't even have to be in Yellowstone for that. I once went to the Badlands in South Dakota, and they have bison back in there.
Yeah.
And I came up a back road, and I actually saw the truck ahead of me. He went around me about 90 miles an hour. He was flying down the road, and I was going about 40. And he came around a corner, and he had to slow down to cross a bridge. And a bison decided that he didn't like the color of that truck, and I saw the bison hit the truck. So you can be in your car and still be attacked by those things. Yeah,
the park rangers that we've talked to when we were in Yellowstone said you don't even want to look them in the eye from your car because they're cranky. especially the bull bison. They're protecting their herd. They get cranky.
Yep.
They get cranky. So, folks, don't be stupid. You don't want to have to take a test. I promise I won't break these rules. You don't have to do that. When you go to the park, don't try and take a selfie with the bison. Come on. People are doing this stuff. Don't go off the trail where those steaming sulfur springs are, because you'll get boiled to death in seconds. Just use your head, folks. Use your head. Well, Frank, that's it for this episode of Canfield Company. Thanks for being the co-host today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had a good show today. If you have any comments or questions on the show, feel free to shoot me an email at robert@robertcanfield.com. Also, robertcanfield.com. You can look at my website. And my email address is robert@robertcanfield.com. Thanks again for watching the show. And thanks again, Frank Martin, for being the director with the most, and the co-host today. And I hope you all have a great Canfield & Company day. We'll see you next time.